Okay, well, let's start with the main event then, Dan, starting with you, and let's get some more technical analysis on that. What a fight that was. Did you expect the game plan to be laid out quite like that by the Zombie?
Well, I wasn't really sure what to expect. I mean, the Zombie's a very reactive fighter, as we know. He likes to wait and see what his opponent brings to him. And the thing is with Frankie Edgar, he doesn't leave you much time to try and figure that out. Immediately, there's motion, there's pressure, he's thinking about level changes. But Zombie was expecting that check left hook. He knew that Edgar was going to lean heavy on that lead leg and caught him a couple of times with it. The first 2 times he caught him with it, you could see the legs of Edgar go. But then once he was on the floor, Zombie was able to take his back, control him, and then manage the time between control and ground and pound, so there was never time to breathe for Frankie Edgar. When he did able to get back to his feet, uppercut, left hook again, and that was finished. It was a complete performance. We saw him dominating every range. It was beautiful to watch.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is a maturation of Korean Zombie. You know, it's so often in this sport, a guy comes in and makes an early splash, and it's hard for them to get away from what made that early splash. And for Zombie, when you go all the way back to WEC days, what was it? This guy was a brawler. This guy was just fun. You know, it didn't matter if he won or lost. He was going in there. He was finishing fights in outstanding ways, but every now and then he would make a mistake. He would get caught. It would lead to sort of up and down results. Even as recently, if you think about it, the Yair Rodriguez fight. If he would have just stopped and laid back in the last 10 seconds, he would have beat Yair Rodriguez last year, but that's not Zombie. He wants to move forward. And I think all of these experience that he has, and now these new coaches, the new training partners, wanting to be a champion, we're just seeing these more complete performances. You know, I was wondering him coming in here in this emotional environment, everybody around him in South Korea, this was a night about him. I was wondering if he was going to do the same thing, you know, just run out there, guns blazing against Frankie Edgar. I think we're seeing a more intelligent fighter out there, and for me, it makes him more interesting.
And put it into perspective for us, Brett, what it means to have done what he's just done to Frankie Edgar.
Yeah, Frankie Edgar doesn't get knocked out. You know, Frankie Edgar takes damage. Frankie Edgar gets knocked around in the first round. We know that. We've seen that before in his past, but he always has the durability, the wherewithal, and just the intelligence to keep moving. You even saw that. Even though he got finished in the first round, you saw how long. I mean, a lot of other guys, they would have been done, you know, lickety-split right after they were dropped by that hook. Frankie Edgar is as durable and as tough as they come. We know that about the guy. He wanted to remain in there, and it just goes back to what I was saying earlier, and Dan, that you know, Zombie, he didn't just go in there and go wild. He picked his shots and he put the fight away.
I do hope that they keep the Zombie kind of in a little pocket, though, in his shorts that he can just pull out on occasion.
Oh, the guy's still in there, yeah.
Oh, for sure. I don't think you'll ever get rid of that for him. Maybe we should talk about his call-outs. And we had his coach up here as well, and it looks like they've strategized a plan. The names going around, really, all roads lead to Volkanovski. But Volkanovski, does Holloway not get the first shot at Volkanovski first?
I think there's an argument there for that. Absolutely. I don't know whether the fact that it was a unanimous decision, it was quite a clear win for Volkanovski, in my opinion at least. I don't know whether that affects anything or whether Holloway's even healthy to come back and compete right away.
Well, Volkanovski's the one who's just had hand surgery, so he's certainly on the sideline.
Very true, very true. I think there are some interesting matchups for the Korean Zombie, but he's got to keep looking up the rankings now. He can't be that guy that's holding off all the other contenders, waiting for that title shot. We need to get him in there. Whether it's a rematch with Holloway, with a fight with Holloway, with Zabit. I mean, Zabit's up there as well. Yeah. Whoever it is, I think there are 3 good fights for him right up at the top of the division. One of them's a title shot, and the other 2 are absolute dynamite.
There is nothing uninteresting about a Zombie fight. We must move on to the co-main event then, and what a fight that was as well, Brett. Give us a little thumbnail view of the light heavyweight picture, maybe this year, and what it means to have, I guess, someone who's fought for the title. He's not quite a veteran of the UFC, but he's come in and done a lot of work in the time that he's been here to hold off that new breed.
Yeah, well, the light heavyweight division has sort of been in this spot for a while now, and that is that you got Jon Jones, you got everybody else, right? Yeah. And so whoever gets to fight Jon Jones is who happens to get the hot hand, you know, and it looked like there was an opportunity that was going to be Alexander Rakic. You know, we're getting Dominick Reyes, and if Jones gets past Dominick Reyes, well, then who's after that? You know, Corey Anderson is out there, Jan Blachowicz is out there, but Rakic is a guy that people are getting excited about, you know, and you saw why tonight. Even in defeat, I can see why people are so high on him. You can see just the athleticism that he has, the speed that he has, some of the combinations, the seasoned kickboxing that he has. You can tell he's working a little bit on his wrestling. To me, this was a fight in which I was impressed with Rakic, and I have such sky-high expectations for him. I don't think he's there quite yet. I wouldn't even want to see him fight fight Jon Jones. I think that would be actually a detriment to him this early in his career. But I think over the next few years, you're going to see this guy develop into a real star. And Volkan Oezdemir, I don't like his chances against Jon Jones either, but he's showing that in the last 2 fights that he has made some real improvements, because there for a while, for 3 fights, the blueprint was kind of written on Oezdemir. You know, you could get him down, you could tire him out. He had some holes in his wrestling. He had to move camps because of the visa issue. He was training in Florida, then he went to Switzerland. It looked like it was sort of a mess for Oezdemir there for a while, but he's come back and he's won 2 big fights against Latifi and now against Rakic, and so he's on the right track again.
Dan, refine it for us with Volkan then. What is it about his game that has impressed you and is looking better to reignite his career?
Well, I think the confidence in his striking is really coming from his improved wrestling, as you were saying. You know, he was a guest fighter on one of the recent European shows, and every day he was on the mats in one of the training rooms working his takedown defense, working his wrestling. I mean, he's a student of the game, and although, you know, he wants to knock people out, he wants to close distance and knock people out with those heavy hands. The heavy hands that we've seen are at very close range. And when you close that range down, most people are going to want to grab a hold of him. But if you think, I mean, the Cerrone fight was, I mean, that was like a 6-inch punch, bang, right in the side of the head. Same thing with Jimmy Manuwa. So now, elevating his confidence in his wrestling is going to give him confidence in his striking. And I think we saw that tonight. We also saw the evidence of the wrestling. I mean, what, 8 of 9 takedowns defended? Really impressive.
Yeah,
sure.
Battle of the Europeans won by Volkan Oezdemir, who doesn't hold a grudge, apparently, going after all the guys that have beaten him before, but why not? Guys, I've got to get your standout performances of the night. Brett, over to you. What comes to your mind first?
I think it has to be Charles Jourdain. Charles Jourdain came in here, and he was a betting underdog against Doo Ho Choi. And, you know, one thing that Doo Ho Choi told us all week, and I thought that it was interesting, and I thought it was insightful, and I thought it was the right thing for him to say, that was, hey, what changes have you made to your training camp? Well, I've been working a lot with professional boxers because I know I can hurt guys, but I got to get out of the way of punches. And I think he was doing that a little bit early on, and he was having some success against Jourdain, but the Jourdain kept the pressure on him. He found ways to hurt him, and once he clipped him a few times, we saw that reversion back to the old Doo Ho Choi where he was sort of leading with his head, and Jourdain took advantage of that. To come over here and have that type of performance, especially after his last fight in which he said, you know, I didn't live up to my own expectations. I had a bad performance in enemy territory. I wanted to do it again, and he came here and got the biggest win of his career.
I like his personality as well. I think he's got the potential to be a star in front of the cameras as well as inside the octagon. For you, Dan?
It's got to be the fight that I expected to be fight of the night that turned into performance of the night for Alejandre Pantoja.
Oh, you've taken mine.
I'm sorry, John. I was just so surprised that Matt Schnell came out firing back like he was. I mean, when we spoke to him earlier this week, it was the game plan seemed much more like he was going to try and get that kind of reaction out of Pantoja and then punish him for it. But he actually just got sucked right into it, just trading punches. And if you look at the shot that he threw, he was looking for a long hook to the body that left this side of his face open. And Pantoja throws with heat with everything he's got. And, I mean, as you were saying earlier, John, you know, he's a finisher in the striking. He's a finisher in the grappling. I just want to see him keep rising to the top. And now we've got the flyweight title back on the line and 2 very interesting fighters up against each other for it. He's the next guy in line for me.
Yeah.
I guess that leaves my fight then. I'm going to go with Ciryl Gane then. That's the one that's left for me. A guy with such little professional mixed martial arts experience. 6-0 now, 3-0 in the octagon. So he's learning on the job under the brightest lights on the hallowed octagon canvas and doing such a fine job with it. And he showed us more stuff. As you've been saying, Dan, the former Glory kickboxer, or that he was offered that contract, is stealing submissions. Disappointed with his performance. He's disappointed with the fact that he had a decision tonight, but it's going to be cool to see what he comes forward with next. There is a big fight coming up, Brett, in January. I'm sure you will be there.
Is that right?
A guy called Conor McGregor, another fellow called Donald Cerrone. How excited about you seeing McGregor come back and also face Cerrone?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be excited about here, but I think one of the things for me when I look at this is that, hey, it's January and we're getting a Conor McGregor fight, and he's talking about not only Cerrone, but he's also talking about BMF titles, you know, and he's talking about a Khabib rematch, and that's what I want to see. I want to see a motivated Conor McGregor, because when Conor McGregor was motivated and he had goals and he was fighting actively, there was nothing better in the sport. Now, he's starting off with Cerrone at 170 pounds, and I think that the trip could end right there. I mean, I really do. I think Cerrone is very underrated in this matchup. I know, Dan, you and I have talked about this before. I've heard you say this. Cerrone's wrestling is so underrated. You don't think of him as a wrestler because he's the cowboy and he's out there throwing those kicks and he's got the highlight reel. But I've seen this guy string together takedowns that are just so seamless. You know, he draws you in, and then he's into your hips, and he's tripping you to the ground, and before you know it, he's on your back, and the game is over. And if there is a hole in Conor's game, I think that's it. And coming back from a long layoff, wanting to prove something, maybe gets a little aggressive, and those instincts kick in for Donald Cerrone. I could see a submission loss for Conor. I really could.
Yeah, and the other thing as well you have to bear in mind is one of the big parts of Conor McGregor's game is that psychological onslaught at the beginning of the, you know, when the fight's first signed.
I'm surprised that we haven't heard
We don't have
yet.
much time now. I mean, the fight is approaching us. By the time the New Year's arrived, we're going to be ready to step into fight week. So has he had the time to really employ that psychological game against someone I would say is quite susceptible to it in Cowboy?
Yeah.
Did he not maybe plant a few seeds, however, at previous press conferences?
He's scattering seeds across every press conference. You know what Conor's like, handfuls of seeds.
Oh, dear. Well, he has to narrow his focus now, right? You know, a businessman of many different ilks, but he's got serious business when he comes back in a short amount of time. It's the final one for 2019. We will be back in 2020. Thank you very much for watching.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports and analysis, download the ESPN app. And for live streaming and special content, subscribe to ESPN+.